G'day viewers, hello from down under here in Sydney, Australia. There's Winchester just reclining in the morning, his morning nap. So I just wanted to speak to you guys about the universal sound, or the sound of the universe. Sounds pretty funky, doesn't it? So actually recently I've been getting involved in learning the practice of yoga. That's right. And I've learned that in yoga they use a meditative chant which is based on Hindu philosophy, apparently, the practice of Hinduism or the philosophy of Hinduism. And in that philosophy of Hinduism, they believe that the sound of the universe, or the universal sound, is best expressed by the word Om, spelled O-M. O for Oscar, M for magic, O-M. Yeah, Om. So, and you know, they often chant that as a way of kind of harmonizing, getting into synchronicity with the universe. So the Om type of thing, you know, that they do. I don't do it very well. I'm not a very good chanter of Om. But actually, I put my mind to work. This concept. I'm a natural skeptic and naturally investigate things, a bit of a Sherlock Holmes type of person. You know, I don't take things at face value. I want to get behind it and understand it and pull it apart so I can put it back together again. And then I know I understand what it is. I'm just going to do it, you know, because somebody says this is what it is without understanding it. I need to be able to dismantle it and totally understand it before I do it, because I could be doing something I don't want to do, the wrong thing. So I looked into this idea of the universal sound. Where do Hindus get this idea of the universal sound from? And what makes them think that Om is the sound of the universe? So I started thinking, well, is there anything in the Bible about the sound of the universe? I couldn't think of anything offhand. You know, I didn't grab a concordance or do a Google search to try and find some Bible references about the sound of the universe. I'm pretty sure it's not mentioned anywhere, actually, the sound of the universe. Because, I mean, I've read the Bible cover to cover several times, and I don't recall anything being mentioned about the sound that the universe makes. It might be there somewhere, hidden in the details. Quite often you can find bits of scripture that, you know, have obscure references to things that you just passed over your mind when you were reading it. You didn't catch that, you didn't see that detail. That can happen. Absolutely it can. But yeah, I couldn't think of one offhand. So I applied my scientific mind to it and my scientific knowledge, and thought, okay, sound. How does sound work? What is sound? You know, and what I know about sound is that sound is a wave, according to physical laws. It needs to travel through a medium, a physical medium. It can be a solid, a liquid, or a gas. And they're the main three physical mediums that you will learn about if you do physics. And most typically, we're in a gaseous environment here on Earth. So our atmosphere is the typical medium through which sound waves travel to our ears and have an effect upon our the little drum of the ear, which vibrates and sends signals through the auditory nerves and so on, and so we get a sound. But it's through the vibrations that travel through the air or propagate through the air. So when you pluck a string, it vibrates and it affects molecules in the air, and that vibration gets to your ears and causes your ears to vibrate, and you hear it at a certain frequency. Same with the drum. You hit the skin, you beat it with a stick or a beater or whatever. The skin vibrates, it causes the air to vibrate. The air wave, the sound wave travels through the molecules of the air to your ears. So you get it by now, don't you? It's the propagation of waves through a medium. It can be heard through liquids, like if you're scuba diving under the water. Yes, you can hear sound traveling through that medium, but it travels at a different rate. If you're putting your ear to a railway track, yes, you can hear sound waves from an approaching train travelling through the rail track. It travels at a different rate, and all that sort of stuff. But in space, it's like the old saying, in space no one hears you scream. Maybe it's not an old saying, but it's a science fiction saying, at least. Science fiction horror saying. To me, it's an old saying. In space, no one hears you scream. So yeah, there it is. So, but it's very true scientifically, because sound waves cannot propagate through a vacuum. If there's no liquid, there's no gas, there's no solid medium, sound waves cannot propagate. But thankfully, that is actually a blessing. It's one of God's blessings, because one of the largest, most important celestial objects in our, what do we call it? Galaxy, I think. Getting the right sort of regional category, a galaxy. I think the sun in our galaxy is obviously the biggest. It's massive by comparison to everything else. It's ridiculously massive. It's like it's virtually like a beach ball compared to a marble. Like, seriously, the Earth would be like a marble, maybe, in comparison to the sun being like a beach ball. It's that much of a size difference. It's unbelievable how big. And it's probably even bigger than that, actually, when I think about it. I think the sun is probably even bigger than the beach ball size in comparison to the Earth. It's a ridiculously large mass, but it's a mass of gases and stuff. I don't know a lot about the sun and how it works and the physics of it, but basically I know it's a big ball of some form of energy, whether it's liquid or gas or whatever, and it's just constantly in a state of exothermic reaction. It's an explosion. It's more than one explosion, it's multiple explosions. It's explosions going off all the time. It's just constant explosions, and they're nuclear level explosions. Like, and we're talking nuclear fusion as opposed to nuclear fission. So like the bigger explosions, like, because apparently they say they use a nuclear fission reaction, which is splitting the atom, as a detonator for a fusion reaction, which is fusing two atoms together, which liberates more energy than the splitting of the atom. So yeah, so like the sun is a massive ball of nuclear fusion reactions going off constantly. Like, imagine the kind of best analogy I could come up with is like when you are cooking corn, kernels of corn in a pot with oil. The result is called popcorn, but once those kernels of corn reach a certain temperature in the liquid in the oil in the pan, they'll start to explode into what's known as popcorn, and it does it like an explosive type of thing. And you know that when you're heating it all up to a certain level, all of a sudden all those corn kernels start to go off at the same time, and you get this kind of cacophony of explosions. When you're cooking popcorn, if you've ever done that, you know what it's like. They all go off at once. It sounds like they're all going off at once, or pretty much simultaneously. So that's kind of maybe an analogy you could apply to the sun, what it's like in terms of explosions going off all the time, like a pot of popcorn going off. They're all just going off all the time. These explosions, these nuclear explosions, constantly going off like a pot of popcorn exploding. But we can't hear it. So that's the God blessing that we get, because there's a massive vacuum between the earth and the sun. Thank God we can't hear the sun, because if we could, it would be deafening. The sound of the sun would drown out everything in the galaxy. It would. The nuclear explosions going off would be that loud and that constant. It would be deafening. If you could hear the sun, if there was if the Earth's atmosphere extended to the sun, and we could hear the sun, it would be deafening. It would probably blow our eardrums out. Like, it'd be that deafening. And it would be just these constant explosions going off, constant nuclear explosions going off all the time. So if scientifically, if there was going to be any sound to the universe, it would be the sound of suns. And suns are balls of constant nuclear explosions. Wow, yeah, that's right. So, and I thought about it, and I thought, okay, what does an explosion sound like? Well, the classic kind of cartoon, phonetic description of an explosion is boom, boom. It starts with this thud, b note, and then it goes into the oom note. So that's where I think, that the Hindus have got it part right when they're talking about the sound of the universe. Oom is kind of the end of it, the second half of it, or maybe more than the second half of it. But whatever, it's kind of not the beginning of the sound. It's kind of more towards the middle and the end of the sound that the universe makes. In the boom sound that the universe generates, generally speaking, from exploding suns, the oom is only a part of it, and it's probably the second 2/3 of it, maybe. So the sound of the universe is not oom. It's not just oom. It's going to be drowned out by the buh, which is the thud at the start. And if you know anything about drumming, you know that when a drum pedal meets a bass drum head, it makes this incredible thud. Buh! It's a solid boo or buh sound. And then you only get the oom after the pedal or the beater has been removed from the head and the head just vibrates. That's the oom. But the initial thud, the buh, when it hits, is the loudest and the most poignant note, you could say, in that series of notes of the boom sound. It's really the buh when it hits the head that's the loudest and most poignant. So if you imagine those buh notes going off constantly, this is where it turns into translating the bowl of popcorn sound into something that's this constant thud note sound. So the closest analogy I could come up with, it's like a drum roll. Basically, it's a drum roll, because if you hit a drum head with a single stick, bah, you get this ba, and you get a bit of at the end, but it's mainly a ba sound. If you hit it twice, ba ba. If you hit it more than that, and you hit it continuously, you get what's called a drum roll. You're getting this constant sound of the B note. It's a drum roll. It's classically referred to as a drum roll. It can get faster and slower in frequency, so you can go, or you can go, so I don't know how fast the frequency of the drum roll is because I haven't heard the sound of a sun. I haven't heard it. Scientifically, I don't think it's been done yet. What's the frequency of the explosions? Don't know. And that'll give us what it is, how fast the drum roll is. But the sound of a sun is like a drum roll. So those explosions going off constantly, and the B note is the predominant one, not the the thud at the beginning of the note. You're hearing that drowns out the at the end. Because it never stops, so you don't get to hear the it's drowned out by the b and the drum roll of it constantly. So the universe, the sound of the universe it's like a drum roll. Wow, yeah, there it is, man. It's a drum roll. It's very military, isn't it? When you think about it like that, a drum roll. We're dancing to the sound of a drum roll. The universe is progressing to the sound of a drum roll. It's very military when you think about it. Very disciplined, organized, military in flavor. But my theory is backed up in a number of ways that I can mention. One of them is the fact that when newborn infants are born, and they are suddenly met with coming out of one realm of existence into this realm of existence, so out of a not in the universe to being in the universe as we know it, one of the first things they do is they start to imitate or emulate their experience. And have you ever noticed that babies will do this? Do you ever notice babies do that? What does it sound like? It sounds like a drum roll. Little babies vibrate their lips like that, like a fart sound or a vibrating sound. Why? Because that's what the universe gives them. They're born into the universe, and the universe gives them the sound. Intuitively, they imitate it. So they say, this is what the universe is. This is what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like. That's what I'm getting. Wow. And the interesting thing about that is that the closest culture I can think of in the world that's got it right is not the Indian Hindu culture. They've literally got the wrong end of the stick. So here's one for Australian Aboriginals. Our mob got the right end of the stick. They definitely did. Well done.